I still remember the hum of the machines in my lab, the sterile scent of the research papers that surrounded me, and the hours spent in perfect solitude consumed by thoughts that had no room for anything beyond logic and evidence. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Gray, and I am a physicist. I have spent my life unraveling the mysteries of the universe, but not in the way that most people think. To them, the cosmos may be a place of wonder, mystery, and divine intervention. To me, it was simply a series of predictable laws, an intricate web of equations that described how stars were born, how they died, and everything in between. At the age of 42, I was already a respected name in the world of science, my work on quantum mechanics and cosmology earning me both accolades and the attention of my peers. I had spent years meticulously studying the origins of the universe, tirelessly poring over the data from particle colliders, calculating the trajectory of galaxies, and investigating the fundamental forces that governed all existence. My life's work was centered on one simple principle. There is no room for anything beyond what can be measured, observed, and proven. I was not one to entertain ideas of spirituality or higher beings. Religion, to me, was a relic of a bygone age, a superstition that humanity had outgrown. I believed that the quest for knowledge, the pursuit of scientific truth, was the only real path to understanding. I had been raised in a family that upheld these same values. My parents were both highly educated, my father a renowned chemist, and my mother a professor of mathematics. Our home was filled with books, discussions on the latest advancements in science, and a firm belief that faith was nothing more than an illusion. As a young man, I had considered myself agnostic at best, dismissing any talk of God or religion with a quiet intellectual superiority. I had no time for such things. There was no evidence, no proof, no data to support such concepts. The idea of a higher power seemed to me a comforting illusion for the weak-minded, an escape from the cold reality of the universe. My family and I were close, though. My wife, Clara, was a brilliant mathematician. We had met in graduate school, and our shared love for logic and reason had brought us together. Our home in Boston, a cozy apartment overlooking the Charles River, was a quiet sanctuary where we could both pursue our work uninterrupted. Clara shared my views on religion, and together we built a life based on intellectual pursuits, mutual respect, and a love for knowledge. Our daughter Emily was 7 years old at the time. She was a curious and inquisitive child, always asking questions about the stars, the planets, and the mysteries of the universe. But unlike most children, she had never asked about God or faith. It seemed as though the questions of the cosmos were more than enough to fill her young mind. My life, in its simplicity, revolved around my research. Every day I would head into my lab at the university, often working late into the night. I would analyze data, write papers, and discuss theories with my colleagues. I was driven by the relentless pursuit of truth, of discovering the fundamental laws that governed everything in existence. I saw beauty in equations, in the symmetry of the universe, in the intricate patterns of nature. But in all of it, there was no room for something as intangible as spirituality. To me, the universe was a vast, impersonal machine, operating with precision and purpose, but devoid of meaning beyond its physical reality. Yet, as I continued my work, something began to stir within me. At first, it was subtle, a sense of emptiness, a longing for something more. I had everything I could want: a successful career, a loving family, recognition in my field, and yet there was this deep, gnawing feeling that I was missing something. It wasn't a sense of doubt about my work, but rather a sense of yearning, a yearning for answers that couldn't be found in equations or experiments. I tried to ignore it. After all, there was no place for such feelings in the world of science. The world of reason and logic was where I felt most at home. But as I stood in my lab late one evening, poring over a particularly perplexing problem in quantum physics, the feeling only grew stronger. It wasn't a specific thought or question. It was more of an instinctive pull, a sense that there was something I wasn't seeing, a piece of the puzzle that I had yet to find. I set aside my papers, stood up from my desk, and walked to the window of my office. The city of Boston stretched out before me, the lights of the buildings twinkling in the night like distant stars. I thought about the vastness of the universe, about the billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. I thought about the black holes, the dark matter, and the ever-expanding nature of space. I had spent my entire career studying it all, trying to understand it, to explain it. But in that moment, standing there in the silence of the night, I realized that for all my knowledge, there was something I didn't understand. Something beyond the reach of science. Something that couldn't be explained by the laws of physics. I shook my head and laughed at myself. This was ridiculous. I had no time for such idle thoughts. But as I returned to my desk and continued my work, that feeling, a sense of longing, of searching, persisted. I couldn't shake it. Little did I know, this feeling, this deep inner yearning, would soon lead me to something that would change everything I thought I knew about the universe. The next few days passed in a blur. My work continued as usual, but that nagging sense of emptiness never left me. It wasn't a constant presence, but it was always there, lurking in the background. I began to feel restless, as though I was on the edge of discovering something incredible, yet just out of reach. Then, one evening, it happened. I was alone in my office, as I often was late at night, surrounded by papers and equations. I had just received the latest data from a particle collider experiment, and I was examining the results when it suddenly struck me. Something was wrong. The data didn't add up. It wasn't that the equations were incorrect or that the experiment had failed. It was something deeper, an overwhelming sense that the universe was not as it appeared. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. How could this be? How could something as fundamental as the data from this experiment not align with everything I knew? And then, as if in response to my thoughts, the room changed. A brilliant light flooded the space, so bright that I had to shield my eyes. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but gentle, warm, and all-encompassing. The lab, which had been filled with the cold hum of machines and the sterile scent of paper and metal, was now alive with an indescribable energy. I could feel it in the air, like an invisible presence that was wrapping around me. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. The light intensified, and before I knew it, a figure appeared before me. At first, I thought it was a trick of the mind, some kind of optical illusion. But as the figure became clearer, I saw him. A man, radiating light, standing in front of me with a presence that was both calming and awe-inspiring. He wore simple robes, and his face was serene, full of compassion and understanding. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me with a gaze that seemed to see straight into my soul. And then, with a voice that was both gentle and powerful, he spoke. "Nathaniel," he said, "look beyond the physical world. There is more than what you can see with your eyes. There is more than the equations, the data, the experiments. Come and I will show you." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came. My mind raced. Who was this man? What was happening? But even as I asked these questions, I felt no fear, only a deep sense of peace, as though I was in the presence of something profoundly familiar. "Come," he said again, his voice soft and inviting. "The journey has just begun." And in that moment, I realized that everything I had ever known, the science, the equations, the universe itself, was about to change forever. I don't know how to explain it. The room had changed in an instant. The harsh lights of my lab, the machines that I had spent years perfecting, and the endless equations that consumed my thoughts, all of it seemed to fade into the background. What remained was a presence, a being of light, of peace, and of unimaginable love. It was as though the very air around me was pulsing with warmth, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely seen. My thoughts were a whirlwind. I was a scientist, a man who prided himself on logic and skepticism, who had spent his life dismissing anything that couldn't be quantified or measured. And now, standing before me, was this figure who defied all the rules of reason. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling despite myself. The figure smiled gently. It wasn't a smile of mockery or amusement. It was the kind of smile that made me feel as though he understood everything about me, my doubts, my fears, my inner turmoil. He knew me in a way that no one else could, not even my wife, Clara. And in that instant, I realized that I was in the presence of someone far beyond anything I had ever encountered. "I am Jesus," he said, his voice like a soft melody that soothed my racing heart. "And I have come to show you the truth." I shook my head in disbelief. Jesus? The figure from history, the one I had dismissed as a mere man, a myth perhaps, or a legend. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of delusion, some overactive imagination caused by the stress of my work. But as I stood there, I felt no fear, only awe. There was no malice in his presence, no trickery, no agenda. There was only love, a love so pure, so profound that it seemed to surround me, to envelop me in its embrace. For the first time in my life, I felt at peace. "You don't believe in me," he said gently, his words piercing through my skepticism. "I understand, but I am here not to force you to believe, but to show you. There is more to this world than what your eyes can see and your mind can comprehend." I wanted to speak, to argue, to ask questions, to demand some kind of proof. But the truth was I was mesmerized. In my years of studying the universe, I had never encountered anything so real. There was no illusion here, no trickery. Everything about him radiated truth. "What do you want from me?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to understand," he said. "I want you to see the world as it truly is, not as you've been taught to see it. There is more than just physics and equations. There is a divine order, a purpose to everything, and you are a part of that purpose." His words hit me like a wave. I couldn't process them immediately. It was as if my mind was fighting against the reality of the situation. How could I, a man of reason, accept this? How could I reconcile everything I knew about the universe with what he was saying? "I know this is hard for you to grasp," Jesus continued, his eyes filled with compassion. "But you have spent your life searching for answers. I am here to show you that the answers you seek are not confined to the limits of your equations. The answers you seek are in the very fabric of the universe, in the divine order that holds it all together." I felt a stirring inside me, an internal conflict. My entire life had been dedicated to seeking knowledge through logic, through science. How could I now entertain the idea that there was a divine force, a higher power, that governed everything? But despite my inner turmoil, I couldn't deny the truth of his words. There was something deeply authentic about this encounter. It wasn't just an idea or a belief, it was a presence, a truth that resonated deep within me. "I want to show you something," Jesus said softly, as if reading my thoughts. "Come with me." Before I could react, the light around him intensified, and I felt a sudden pull as though my very soul was being drawn toward him. I wanted to resist, to stay grounded in the reality I knew. But my body moved on its own, as if some unseen force was guiding me forward. In the blink of an eye, the lab around me disappeared. The familiar walls of my office, the desks covered in research papers, and the machines that I had spent so many sleepless nights working with, all of it vanished. And in its place, I found myself standing in a vast, empty void. It wasn't dark, not exactly, but it was a place of profound stillness, a place where time seemed to have no meaning. There were no stars, no galaxies, no visible markers of space. Just an expanse that felt infinite, stretching out into nothingness. I turned to Jesus, my heart pounding in my chest. He stood beside me, his figure glowing with an inner light that illuminated the space around us. "Where are we?" I asked, my voice shaky. "We are at the beginning," Jesus replied, his voice calm and reassuring. "The beginning of everything." I had read about the Big Bang, the birth of the universe. I had studied the theories of cosmology, the mathematics that described how the universe came to be. But none of it had prepared me for what I was about to witness. Without warning, a burst of light erupted in the distance, filling the void with a radiance so brilliant that it was almost unbearable to look at. It wasn't just light, it was energy, life itself, emerging from the emptiness. The light grew, expanding outward, and I felt it in my very being, as if the universe itself was breathing life into existence. The air around me vibrated with energy, and I could feel the very particles of the universe coming into being. Atoms, stars, galaxies, they all formed before my eyes, emerging from the primordial void, bound together by forces I could barely comprehend. "This is the moment of creation," Jesus said, his voice full of reverence, "the beginning of everything. The moment when light entered the darkness and the universe began its dance of life." I stood there, mesmerized, watching in awe as the cosmos unfolded before me. Stars ignited in fiery brilliance, galaxies spun into existence, and the fabric of space-time itself seemed to bend and shift as the universe took shape. It was a sight that defied any scientific explanation, a spectacle so beautiful, so magnificent that I felt small in the face of it. This was no longer just a scientific theory. This was real. The universe, with all its complexities and intricacies, was alive. Alive in a way that went beyond the cold laws of physics and mathematics. There was purpose here. There was intention. This is where it all began, Jesus continued. But the story is far from over. You, Nathaniel, are part of this story. Your search for knowledge, for truth, is part of a greater journey. A journey that goes beyond what you can see and measure. I couldn't speak. Words failed me as I watched the universe come to life before my eyes. The beauty, the order, the sheer complexity of it all. It was unlike anything I had ever imagined. It was as though everything I had ever believed about the universe had been shattered, replaced by something far greater, something that transcended the limits of my understanding. I turned to Jesus, my mind racing with 1,000 questions. But before I could ask, he placed a hand on my shoulder, and I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. "Do not worry," he said gently. "The answers will come. But for now, you must understand that the universe and your place within it are part of a greater design. A design that transcends reason, but one that is filled with love, with purpose, and with meaning." And in that moment, I knew that everything I had believed about the world, about science, about reality, was about to change forever. I had always believed that the universe was a cold, indifferent machine. It was nothing but a complex web of equations, governed by the laws of physics and the randomness of chance. I had spent decades studying the stars, the galaxies, the atoms, trying to uncover the secret formula that explained everything. I thought I understood the universe, that I had it all figured out. But as I stood there in the presence of Jesus, watching the universe unfold in front of my eyes, I realized that I knew nothing. "Look closely," Jesus said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "What you are witnessing is the moment when time and space, light and matter, all came into being. But this is just the beginning. There is more to see. Come with me." Before I could respond, I felt myself moving, as if pulled by an invisible force. The void around us shifted, and suddenly, we were no longer standing in the emptiness. I was no longer in the lab, or even in the void where the universe had been born. I was traveling, faster than I could comprehend, through the very fabric of space-time itself. The stars around us began to blur, stretching and warping as we moved through the universe. I could feel the energy of the cosmos surging around me, as if the entire universe were alive and pulsing with life. The fabric of reality itself seemed to bend and twist, and I realized that I was no longer just a spectator. I was part of this vast cosmic dance. "Do not be afraid," Jesus said softly, sensing my growing discomfort. "You are safe. I will guide you." I wanted to ask questions, so many questions, but I was overwhelmed by what I was experiencing. The laws of physics, the ones I had dedicated my life to studying, no longer seemed to apply. Time and space were no longer fixed. They were fluid, like a river flowing in all directions. I had always believed that the universe was governed by immutable laws, but now I was beginning to see that there was something far greater at work, something beyond the grasp of human understanding. As we traveled, the stars began to take shape. I saw them being born, their nuclear fires igniting in the darkness. I saw galaxies forming, swirling together in intricate patterns that defied explanation. I saw the first moments of life, the first sparks of energy that would eventually give rise to planets, stars, and even living creatures. It was beautiful, awe-inspiring, and completely beyond my comprehension. "The universe is not random," Jesus said, as if reading my thoughts. "It is purposeful. It has a beginning, but it also has a purpose, a design that transcends time and space. You have spent your life searching for answers, Nathaniel, but the answers you seek are not just in equations and formulas. They are in the very fabric of existence itself. And I am here to show you that the universe is not a machine. It is a masterpiece." I wanted to protest. I wanted to argue that this couldn't be true, that the laws of physics, the equations, the observations, I had spent my life building this understanding of the universe, and it all pointed to a random, chaotic existence. But as I stood there watching the stars being born, feeling the energy of the cosmos, I realized that what I had always believed was incomplete. There was something more. "You see," Jesus continued, his voice gentle yet powerful, "the universe is not just a collection of matter and energy. It is a reflection of divine will. Every galaxy, every star, every atom is part of a greater design, a design that is both beautiful and purposeful. I didn't know how to respond. It was as if my entire worldview was crumbling before me. The universe, the very thing I had dedicated my life to understanding, was not a cold, indifferent machine. It was a work of art, a living creation with purpose, beauty, and love at its core. How is this possible? I finally managed to ask. How can you say that the universe is purposeful? There is so much chaos, so much randomness in the world. How can there be a design behind it all? Jesus smiled, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding in his eyes. It is true that the universe appears chaotic from your perspective, but what you are witnessing is only part of the story. The divine order is not always visible to the human eye. It is woven into the very fabric of reality. And the chaos you see is often a reflection of the free will that I have given to my creation. But beneath it all, there is love, and that love holds the universe together. As he spoke, I began to understand. I had spent my life looking for order in the universe, trying to find the underlying patterns, the laws that governed everything. But I had missed something crucial. The universe was not just a machine, a set of rules to be discovered. It was a living, breathing creation, infused with love and purpose. And that love, divine love, was the force that held everything together. As we continued our journey, Jesus showed me more. He showed me the formation of the planets, the development of life on Earth, the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of human beings. I saw the struggles and triumphs of humanity, the pursuit of knowledge, and the longing for connection. I saw how each moment, each event, was part of a greater plan, a plan that had been set in motion from the very beginning of time. It was overwhelming. For the first time in my life, I felt small, not insignificant, but humbled. I had spent years studying the universe, convinced that I was uncovering the secrets of existence. But now I saw that there were greater mysteries, greater truths that I could never have imagined. This is what you have been seeking, Jesus said softly. The purpose of the universe is not just to be understood. It is to be experienced. You are a part of it, Nathaniel, and your search for knowledge is part of a greater journey, a journey that leads to love, to understanding, to unity. I stood there in the midst of the cosmos, feeling the weight of his words. I had been so focused on finding the answers through logic and reason, but now I realized that the answers were not just intellectual, they were spiritual. The universe was not just a set of equations to be solved. It was a divine story to be understood. As the journey continued, I began to see the universe in a new light. Every star, every planet, every galaxy was part of a greater whole. They were all interconnected, all part of a divine design, and I, just a tiny speck in the vast expanse of space, was a part of it too. I turned to Jesus, my heart filled with awe and wonder. I see it now, I whispered. The universe, it's not just a machine, it's a work of art, a masterpiece. Jesus smiled, his eyes filled with compassion. Yes, Nathaniel, and you are part of that masterpiece. You are part of the divine design, and now you have the opportunity to share this truth with the world. I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me, as if I had finally found what I had been searching for my entire life. The universe was not just a puzzle to be solved. It was a story to be understood, a story of love, of purpose, and of divine order, and I was a part of that story. As the vastness of the universe continued to unfold before me, I found myself overwhelmed by the beauty and complexity of what I was witnessing. I had spent years studying the structure of galaxies, the dance of stars, and the atomic particles that form the very building blocks of matter. But in all my years of research, I had never seen the universe like this. Alive, purposeful, intricately woven together by a force far beyond anything I had ever imagined. Jesus, still beside me, gestured towards the swirling galaxies and nebulae, his face radiant with a peace that I had never known. "Nathaniel," he said softly, "do you see the order in all of this? Do you see how the stars are born from the dust of the cosmos, how they burn with purpose, and how they eventually fade into new beginnings? The universe is a reflection of divine order, a purposeful design that goes beyond the laws of physics." His words reverberated in my mind, and a flood of understanding began to wash over me. For all my years of study, I had always viewed the universe as a set of mechanical processes, planets revolving around stars, atoms bonding to form molecules, forces of gravity pulling objects towards each other. But I had never stopped to consider the possibility that there was more to the universe than mere mechanics. What if the very laws I had spent my life studying were part of a greater divine order, a design that was intricately woven into every corner of existence? "Look at the stars, Nathaniel," Jesus said, pointing towards the distant heavens. "Each one of them has a purpose. Each one of them is placed exactly where it needs to be to maintain the balance of the universe. There is no randomness here. What you see is the result of a divine intelligence, a creator whose wisdom and love sustain the cosmos." I stared at the stars, and for the first time I saw them with new eyes. They were not just distant balls of burning gas. They were sentinels of a higher order, each one fulfilling its role in the vast cosmic dance. The forces of gravity, the electromagnetic interactions, the nuclear reactions, all of it was part of a beautiful harmony, a symphony that had been set into motion at the very beginning of time. The laws of nature, the laws of physics, they are not just arbitrary rules, Jesus continued, his voice rich with compassion. They are a reflection of divine wisdom. The precision with which the universe operates, the fine-tuning of the constants of nature, it all points to a purposeful design. The very fact that life is possible, that we can exist in this vast universe, is a testimony to that design. I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was not what I had expected. I had always believed that the universe was indifferent to our existence, that life was the result of chance, a cosmic accident. But now I was beginning to see that this was not the case. Life, the very fact that we were here, was part of something much greater, something purposeful. The universe was not a random, chaotic accident. It was a creation, a masterpiece, meticulously crafted by an intelligence far beyond my own comprehension. But what about the chaos, the randomness? I asked, still struggling to reconcile this new understanding with everything I had been taught. There is so much disorder in the universe. Stars explode, galaxies collide, and life itself is full of pain and suffering. How can that be part of a divine order? Jesus looked at me with deep compassion, as if he could see the turmoil in my heart. "Yes, there is chaos in the world," he said gently. "But that chaos is part of the free will that I have given to my creation. The universe is not a static machine. It is dynamic, ever evolving. It is filled with potential and possibility. The randomness you see is not the absence of order, but the freedom to choose, to create, and to shape the world." His words hit me like a thunderclap. For the first time, I saw the universe not as a cold, indifferent place, but as a living, breathing entity, full of possibilities and choices. The chaos was not a sign of disorder, it was the result of freedom, of the ability to choose. It was part of the divine plan, a necessary aspect of the universe that allowed for growth, change, and the unfolding of purpose. "The universe is not just a machine," Jesus continued. "It is a story of creation, of growth, of love. And that love, the love that sustains all things, is the ultimate truth of the cosmos. Everything that exists is held together by love, by the wisdom of the Creator who designed it all." I stood in awe, trying to absorb the magnitude of what Jesus was saying. I had spent my entire life studying the physical laws that govern the universe, convinced that everything could be explained by science. But now I was beginning to see that science alone could not explain the mysteries of existence. There was something deeper, something beyond the reach of human logic and reason. There was a divine order, a cosmic intelligence that held everything together. "Do you see, Nathaniel?" Jesus asked, his voice soft but filled with a quiet authority. "The laws of physics, the forces of nature, they are not separate from the divine. They are the expression of the divine order, the design that has been set into motion from the very beginning. The universe is not a machine to be studied. It is a living creation to be understood, to be revered, and to be loved." I looked out at the stars, and for the first time, I felt a profound sense of connection. I was no longer just a scientist observing the universe from a distance. I was part of it. My existence, my very being, was intricately tied to the cosmos, to the divine order that Jesus was revealing to me. I felt small, yes, but I also felt significant. I was a part of something much greater than myself. "How can I share this?" I asked, my voice trembling with the weight of the revelation. "How can I explain this to others? I've spent my entire life studying the universe, and now I see that it is not just a machine, but a masterpiece. How can I convey that to the world? Jesus smiled gently, his eyes filled with compassion. You do not need to explain it with words, Nathaniel. You must live it. Let your life reflect the love and understanding that you have gained. Let your actions speak the truth that you have learned. And when the time is right, others will see it too. I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. I had been so focused on understanding the universe, on unraveling its mysteries, that I had forgotten something crucial. The universe was not just an intellectual puzzle. It was a living creation, a divine masterpiece. And now I was beginning to see it with new eyes. Do you see the harmony in all of this? Jesus asked, gesturing towards the stars. The way everything fits together, the way the laws of nature, the forces of physics, the galaxies, the stars, all of it works together in perfect harmony. That is the divine order. That is the love that holds the universe together. I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. I could see it now. I had been blind, but now I saw. The universe was not a machine. It was a work of art, a masterpiece created by a loving and intelligent creator, and I was part of it. As we continued our journey through the cosmos, I felt a deep sense of awe and gratitude. I had been given a glimpse into the heart of the universe, a glimpse into the divine order that held everything together. And I knew, deep in my soul, that my life would never be the same again. As the cosmos settled around me, the swirling galaxies and stars faded into a quiet stillness. The divine dance of creation seemed to pause, allowing me to catch my breath, to absorb the revelation of order that had been shown to me. But Jesus, ever present beside me, did not allow the journey to end there. He turned toward me, his expression full of compassion and understanding. Nathaniel, he said, his voice soft yet filled with authority, you have seen the beginning of the universe, the intricate web of creation, the divine order behind it all. But now I want you to see something even more profound. I want you to see the essence of human life, the purpose of your existence. I stared at him both in awe and wonder. My entire life had been dedicated to understanding the universe, to uncovering its physical and chemical mechanisms. I had spent years searching for the roots of existence, but what Jesus was offering me now was something entirely different, a perspective on life that I could never have imagined in the realm of science. With a gentle wave of his hand, the scene around us shifted. No longer were we amidst the vast emptiness of space. Instead, I found myself standing in the midst of a great bustling city, a place full of life, energy, and movement. People walked along busy streets, rushing to and fro. Some were lost in thought, others laughing and chatting, while some seemed to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. There was pain in some faces, joy in others, and a deep sense of longing in nearly all. This, Jesus said softly, is the world you inhabit. It is a world full of human beings, each of whom is on their own journey, a journey of purpose, struggle, and transformation. I watched closely as individuals passed by, each one living out their unique story. I saw the complexities of human existence unfold before me. The triumphs, the failures, the challenges of each person trying to make sense of their place in the world. There were moments of great love, moments of deep sorrow, and moments of personal growth. Some reached out to help others, while others clung to their pain, unable to find a way out. Do you see, Nathaniel? Jesus continued, his voice tinged with sadness. Each person is on a journey, searching for meaning. Some find it, and some never do. But their journey is not meaningless. It is part of a greater story, one that is intimately connected to the creation of the universe. The scene before me shifted once again, and now I saw glimpses of the lives of individual human beings. I saw a young mother cradling her child, a father working hard to provide for his family, a teenager grappling with questions of identity and purpose. I saw a couple struggling to stay together amidst the trials of life, an elderly person reflecting on a lifetime of choices and regrets. Each life was a thread in the grand tapestry of the universe, each one part of the divine plan. Human life is not random, Jesus said, his voice now filled with a deep compassion. Each person is created with a purpose. Each person is a reflection of the divine image, carrying within them the potential for love, for growth, for transformation. But they must choose it. They must seek it. I felt a pang in my chest, as if I were seeing for the first time the profound beauty and struggle of human life. For all my years of studying the mechanics of the universe, I had never truly understood the depth of the human experience. I had thought of humans as complex biological machines, driven by genetics, environment, and survival instincts. But now I was seeing them through the lens of love, purpose, and divine intention. Each person, regardless of their background, had a unique role to play in the grand story of creation. Why do some people suffer? I asked, my voice filled with genuine concern. Why do some seem to struggle so much in life? Jesus looked at me with a deep, knowing gaze. Suffering, Nathaniel, is part of the human experience. It is not something to be feared or rejected. Through suffering, people learn, they grow. But suffering does not mean that life is without purpose. It is in the struggle that people often find their greatest strength, their greatest transformation. The question is not why suffering exists, but how people respond to it. I reflected on this deeply, realizing that I had never considered suffering in this way before. As a scientist, I had always sought explanations for everything, reasons for why things happened the way they did. But I had never thought about the spiritual dimension of human suffering. It was not just a random occurrence. It was part of the journey, part of the way in which people grew, learned, and connected with something greater than themselves. Do you see now, Nathaniel? Jesus asked, his voice filled with warmth. The purpose of human life is not just to survive or to achieve intellectual understanding. It is to love. It is to seek connection with one another, with the Creator, and with the universe itself. The pursuit of knowledge, the understanding of the cosmos is important, is only part of the story. The true purpose of life is to love, to give love, to receive love, and to allow love to transform you. I felt a deep stirring within me. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. The universe, with all its order and complexity, was not just a cold, mechanical system. It was alive, purposeful, and interconnected with the very essence of love. And human beings, in all their complexity, were created to be a part of that divine story, a story of growth, transformation, and love. Everything you have learned in your life, Nathaniel, Jesus said gently, has brought you to this point. The study of the universe, the search for knowledge, the pursuit of truth, it is all part of the greater journey. But now, you must look beyond knowledge. You must look with your heart, with your soul, and seek the truth that is found in love. The words pierced me deeply. In that moment, I realized that I had spent my entire life searching for answers in the wrong place. I had sought to understand the universe through logic and reason alone, but I had neglected the most essential truth of all, love. The love that permeates everything, the love that connects the stars, the planets, the galaxies, and every living being. The love that binds us all together as part of a greater whole. Your purpose, Nathaniel, Jesus said softly, is to help others see this truth, to help them understand that the pursuit of knowledge and truth is not an intellectual exercise, it is a spiritual journey. It is a journey of love. I stood there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had just witnessed. I had come to see the universe in a new light, not just as a collection of physical processes, but as a creation filled with purpose, love, and meaning. And I had come to understand that the true purpose of human life was not to acquire knowledge for its own sake, but to love, to connect, and to grow. Jesus turned to me, his eyes filled with compassion. The universe is vast, Nathaniel, but it is not infinite. It is part of a greater whole, and you, as a part of it, have a role to play in the unfolding of this grand story. Now, go and share the truth you have learned. And with that, he began to fade, his presence growing more and more distant. But his words lingered in my heart, a deep truth that I knew I would carry with me for the rest of my life. The world around me had shifted completely. The bustling city, the vibrant human lives, the cosmic creation, all of it had woven together into a tapestry that was no longer just science, logic, or reason. The threads of knowledge, the laws of physics, the stars, and the galaxies all made sense now. But the most profound revelation of all was still to come. The knowledge I had sought all my life seemed incomplete without the final piece, the piece that tied everything together. It was as though I had been shown the mechanics of the clock, but I hadn't yet understood what made it tick. And Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, was about to show me that final piece, the truth of love and spirituality that breathed life into everything. As I stood there, reflecting on what I had just witnessed, Jesus turned to me, his expression serene but filled with a deep, knowing love. His eyes shone with a light that I could not yet fully comprehend, but I could feel it in my bones, a love that was as ancient as the universe itself and as present as the breath in my lungs. "Nathaniel," he said, his voice like a soft whisper that seemed to echo in the depths of my soul, "you have seen the beginning of the universe. You have seen the divine order that holds all things together. But there is one truth that surpasses all others. It is the force that sustains the universe. It is the force that gives meaning to everything, and it is the force that binds all creation. That force, Nathaniel, is love." The word love struck me with a kind of force I hadn't expected. I had studied love, of course, human love, familial love, romantic love, but I had always considered it a biological or psychological response. It was a chemical reaction in the brain, a survival mechanism, perhaps even a cultural construct. But the love Jesus was speaking of was different. It was not confined to the realm of human emotions or instincts. It was something far grander, something that transcended all boundaries, all dimensions. It was the very essence of the cosmos itself. He continued, his voice steady and full of profound truth. "Love is the foundation of all things. It is the source from which everything flows. The stars in the sky, the forces of gravity and electromagnetism, the bonds that hold atoms together, these are not random or impersonal processes. They are expressions of divine love. Everything in the universe exists because love sustains it. Everything has a purpose because love calls it into being." I stood there, stunned. It was as though the universe had just revealed its true face to me, its heart, its soul. And it was love. The vast expanse of space, the cold void between stars, the seemingly indifferent laws of nature, they were all manifestations of something far deeper and more meaningful. Something that could not be explained away by mere equations or observations. They were part of a greater spiritual truth, a truth I had never known or understood. "Jesus," I found myself whispering, my voice trembling with awe and confusion, "how can love be the force that sustains everything? How can love be the foundation of all creation?" Jesus smiled at me, a smile filled with compassion and understanding. "Nathaniel, you have seen the physical laws that govern the universe. You have studied the equations that describe how particles interact, how energy flows. But behind these equations, behind these laws, is a deeper truth. The laws themselves, the symmetry, the beauty, the precision, they are all expressions of love. Love is not merely an emotion. It is the very substance of existence. It is what gives life its meaning, its direction, its purpose. Without love, nothing would exist." I thought back to the moments I had spent studying the universe, sitting alone in my laboratory, peering through telescopes, analyzing data, trying to decipher the mysteries of the cosmos. I had always approached it with a mindset of detachment, objectivity, and skepticism. But now I saw it through an entirely different lens. The universe was not a cold, indifferent machine, but a creation filled with meaning. And the force that held it together was not impersonal. It was love. Love was the force that made stars shine, that caused planets to orbit their suns, that gave birth to life itself. Love was the very essence of the universe, the heart that beat within it. "But what about human beings?" I asked, my voice filled with wonder. "If love is the force behind everything, what does that mean for us? How do we fit into this?" Jesus' eyes softened as he looked at me. "Human beings, Nathaniel, are the most profound reflection of this love. You are created in the image of God, and that means that you are made to love. The love that flows from God flows through you. But you must choose to open yourself to it. You must choose to love, not only those who are close to you, but all of creation. To love the way God loves. To love without condition, without limit." I took a deep breath, absorbing his words. They felt like a weight being lifted from my soul. All my life, I had been focused on understanding the universe, but I had never truly understood the fundamental truth that lay at its core, that love was the force behind it all. It was the reason for our existence, the purpose of our lives, and the key to understanding the universe itself. But why did I need to see this? I asked, still struggling to comprehend the full scope of what Jesus was revealing to me. Why was I shown this truth? What am I supposed to do with it? Jesus looked at me with great tenderness, his voice filled with a quiet urgency. Nathaniel, you are here because the world is lost. People are searching for meaning, but they are looking in the wrong places. They seek knowledge, wealth, power, but they do not realize that love is the answer. You, my child, have been given a great gift. You have seen the truth, and now you must share it with others. The world needs to understand that love is the foundation of all things. They need to understand that love is not something to be feared or misunderstood. It is the greatest force in the universe. As his words sank in, I felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. For all my years of academic achievements and intellectual pursuits, I had never truly understood the importance of love in the grand scheme of things. Knowledge without love was hollow, and the pursuit of truth without compassion was incomplete. The world needed to hear this message, this truth that transcended science, logic, and reason. It was the message that could heal the wounds of humanity, bring unity to a fractured world, and restore the connection between man and God. The world is crying out for love, Nathaniel, Jesus said, his voice now filled with a deep sadness. And you, my child, have the knowledge to show them the way. Share this truth with them. Tell them that love is the answer. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. My work in science, my search for understanding, had only been the beginning of a much greater journey. The true journey was one of love, sharing it, living it, and allowing it to transform not only my life, but the lives of those around me. As I stood there facing the overwhelming beauty and depth of the revelation Jesus had given me, I felt a new sense of peace and clarity. My life, once driven by the pursuit of knowledge alone, now had a deeper purpose. I was no longer just a scientist. I was a messenger of truth, a bearer of love. The universe was not just a series of equations. It was a sacred creation, and love was its essence. I had much to learn and much to share. But I knew now that my true purpose lay not in the discovery of facts, but in the sharing of love. For love, as I had come to understand it, was the key to everything. I woke with a start, gasping for air as though I had been underwater for hours. The sterile, cold air of the lab felt alien against my skin after the warmth of the vision I had experienced. For a moment, I thought it was all a dream, that I had imagined the impossible, the light, the journey through the cosmos, the words of Jesus. But as I looked around the room, something deep within me told me that what I had seen was real. The experience, the truth, was undeniable. It was as though a curtain had been lifted from my eyes, and I could no longer look at the world in the same way. My heart raced, and I stood there for a few moments, trying to make sense of everything. The equations on the whiteboard, the research papers scattered across the desk, all of it seemed so insignificant now. I had spent my entire life chasing answers, seeking knowledge, and yet now I saw that knowledge without love was an incomplete, hollow pursuit. Jesus had shown me the missing piece, the piece that tied everything together. And now, he was asking me to share that truth with the world. I ran a hand through my disheveled hair, still trying to shake off the heaviness of the experience. The man who had stood before me, who had shown me the beginning of time itself, had called me to something greater. It wasn't enough to simply understand the universe. I needed to share what I had learned, share the message that love was the foundation of it all. The very fabric of existence, the fine-tuned laws of nature, the vast reaches of the cosmos, they were all expressions of divine love. Every particle, every star, every human being was a part of this grand, beautiful design. The universe was not a cold, random collection of matter and energy. It was a living, breathing expression of a divine plan. And at the heart of that plan was love. But how could I explain this to the world? How could I convince others, especially those who, like me, had dedicated their lives to science, that love, something so intangible, was the most powerful force in the universe? How could I reconcile the two worlds, the world of logic, evidence, and reason, and the world of faith, spirituality, and love? Would they understand? Would they dismiss me as a fool? As these questions swirled in my mind, I felt a gentle presence beside me. I turned, and to my surprise, there he was again, Jesus, standing in the corner of my lab, his eyes filled with compassion and understanding. The warmth I felt in his presence was enough to calm the turmoil inside me. Nathaniel, he said softly as though he had read my mind, you are not alone in this. Do not fear. The truth you have seen is not meant to be hidden. You are a witness, and your testimony is not just for your mind, but for your heart. Share it with others. The world needs to know that love is the force that holds everything together. I looked into his eyes, searching for the right words, but I was speechless. How could I explain the depths of what I had experienced to people who were so rooted in the physical world, who saw only what could be measured, observed, and tested? How could I bridge the gap between reason and faith, between science and spirituality? But Jesus spoke again, his voice calm and reassuring. Remember, Nathaniel, the truth is not bound by human understanding. It transcends what can be seen and measured. It is not your job to convince everyone. Your job is to share what you know. The seed will be planted, and it will grow in the hearts of those who are ready to hear it. You must trust that love will do the work. His words struck a chord deep within me. It wasn't about convincing everyone. It was about sharing the truth I had seen, speaking from the heart, and trusting that love would do the rest. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to have all the solutions. I just needed to be faithful in sharing what I had learned. With a deep breath, I nodded. The weight of the responsibility, though immense, now felt like a call I could no longer ignore. The truth I had seen, this profound connection between science and spirituality, had to be shared. I could no longer keep it to myself. But what was the first step? How did one begin to bridge the gap between the scientific community, which was so focused on empirical evidence, and the spiritual truth that Jesus had revealed to me? How would my colleagues react? Would they mock me? Would they understand that this wasn't just a personal revelation, but a universal truth? I closed my eyes and took a moment to pray, an act I had never really done before, not in the way I was doing now. I had always thought of prayer as something sentimental, something for those who needed emotional comfort, but now prayer felt like a lifeline. It was my way of aligning myself with the truth that had been shown to me, my way of asking for guidance. God, I whispered, the words coming from deep within, please help me share this truth. Please help me find the courage to speak about love and faith, even when it doesn't make sense to others. Help me to bridge the gap between reason and faith, between knowledge and love. Help me to be the person you need me to be. For the first time in my life, I felt a deep, genuine connection to something beyond myself. The universe was not just an impersonal collection of particles and forces. It was a living, breathing expression of love, and I was a part of it. We all were. When I opened my eyes, Jesus was still there, his smile warm and understanding. Go, Nathaniel, the world is waiting. With that, he disappeared, leaving me in the quiet of my lab. The world outside seemed unchanged, but I was no longer the same. My life had been transformed. The purpose I had searched for, the meaning I had longed for, had been revealed to me in the most profound way possible. The search for knowledge had led me here, not to a discovery of the mechanics of the universe, but to the discovery of the heart of the universe, love. I knew what I had to do. It wasn't just about publishing papers or winning accolades anymore. It was about sharing the message that love was the force that held everything together. It was about showing the world that science and spirituality were not opposing forces, but complementary paths toward the same truth. Love, the ultimate truth, was the key to everything. The first step was easy. I called my closest colleague, Dr. Caroline Matthews, someone who had shared many of my academic pursuits. She was a respected physicist, grounded in logic and evidence, and yet she had always maintained a quiet curiosity about things beyond the physical world. Caroline, I said, my voice trembling with excitement, I need to talk to you about something that will change everything. As I began to share my experience, I saw the skepticism in her eyes, the same skepticism I had once held. But there was also something else, a glimmer of hope, a flicker of curiosity. She didn't dismiss me outright, she listened, and that was all I needed. The journey ahead would not be easy. I knew that, but I also knew that I wasn't alone. I had seen the truth, and now I was called to share it with the world. And so, with a sense of purpose I had never known before, I set out on a new mission, a mission to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, between knowledge and love. It wasn't just about understanding the universe, it was about understanding the heart of the universe. The truth was out there, waiting to be shared, and I was ready to share it, no matter the cost.